Deathtroopers by Schreiber. This book was originally published in 2009. I think I was in high school when I originally saw this cover for the first time. Some kid in my class was doing a book report on it. Obviously the cover was pretty memorable, but the kid couldn't stop reading it. So then years later, I was looking at other books that are coming out in the Star Wars universe. I think there's a few books leading up to the next Star Wars movie. And this book was suggested by Audible. And I happen to remember the cover, recognize the cover from when I was a kid, so I ended up getting it. And a lot of these books on Audible, specifically the Star Wars ones, they tend to have not just the book narrated to you, but the recordings also got a bunch of ship sounds, laser sounds, just other sound effects. So it sounds like you're listening to a play or a movie versus just the book. I also remember when I was a kid going camping in one of those old pop-up campers, and the kid had recordings, like old stories on records that were kind of along the same way, and that's kind of what it reminds me of. Now, I haven't listened to too many Star Wars productions on Audible or read too many of the books, but immediately with this book, what I noticed is it's not directly a story about the struggle against the Empire or anything to do with the Force or any Jedis whatsoever. It's strictly about these prisoners on a prison barge, Imperial prison barge, that happens to bump into a Star Destroyer that was left adrift by the Empire. So the prison barge docks with the Star Destroyer to salvage engine parts off of it and find the whole thing obviously empty. And the obvious question is what happened to the crew? So that's the basic setup of the book. And like with all my other reviews, I try not to give too much away, but it's a little bit of a horror story set up in the Star Wars universe. Now, even though it's an older book, it's a little refreshing to have a story that isn't like every other story before it. Meaning that the characters aren't trying to directly overthrow the Empire, or there isn't that one blooming youth in the story that is trying to struggle with his powers and master the Force, or none of that. Strictly some prisoners that are in a terrible situation trying to outlast a plague that was let loose in the Star Destroyer and then now is let loose on the prison barge. Very simple, but still in that Star Wars universe. So you have all the different various aliens, Wookiees, different age Wookiees, and yes, the sound effects of the Wookiee is also over the audio recording, along with the prison or the engine sounds and blaster sounds. But there's a nice mix of Imperial doctors, people who are on the ship working, and the prisoners who are let loose. One little surprise is that there is the presence of Han Solo as the only recognizable character in the whole book. Every other character is like some new random person that I think is only in this book, but Han Solo and Chewbacca do make an appearance, which is a little bit of a surprise. But not only is he in the book, but it also is portrayed as a young Han Solo. So now with Disney taking over the Star Wars franchise and reviving the franchise and giving all their characters their own movie, now there's supposed to be coming out a new Han Solo movie. I'm a little suspicious if they're going to be using little plot points from this to tie into the movie of the young Han Solo that's supposed to be coming out. It'd be great if they did. It was a good story, but like I said, kind of more of a horror story. And while I'm not much of a horror fan, simplistic plot of these characters trying to get through, basically just trying to get off of the ship in any way that they can, I think really worked out. The author didn't try to tie in too many plot points or overly complicated. It's a very simple plot line, which sometimes is better Sometimes you get these really short books that try to jam in too many different twists and turns, and it just sounds rushed. I don't think this one sounded rushed at all. He just picked one main point and developed it. Very simple plot line, but done very well. There's a few other books coming out, like I said, and I hope they have. I'm going to check them out on Audible and see if they have the sound effects. I don't know that I would want it on every book, but with Star Wars, it adds a little bit to it, which makes my drives to work much easier. Very entertained. Do the whole story. And if you don't have an Audible account, I strongly recommend getting one. If you don't have one, and you're used to reading books on hard copies or print editions, I strongly recommend at least getting this one. And if you don't have an Audible account, then the first book is free. If you don't like it, you can cancel it anyways. Let me know if you've read it, what you thought of it, and I'll talk to you next time.